So welcome, Dr. Easten Law, to OMSC Roundtable, a new media outlet and production of OMSC, of introducing scholars of world Christianity and mission studies. It's so wonderful to have you today join us to have a wonderful conversation together.
Thank you so much, Byung-ho. It's really a joy and a privilege to be able to sit down and have this conversation with you. Really excited.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before we get to learn more about what you do here at OMSC, which in the background that you can see, we're filming right in front of the OMSC House. We want to get to know a bit more about you, Dr. Law. So do you mind introducing yourself, maybe sharing with us what you've been doing prior to joining OMSC?
Sure thing. Well, again, Byung-ho, just really excited for this new media project and for the time and craft you've put into it.
Thank you.
My name is Easten Law, and I was born and raised in Maryland, here in the United States of America. That's the Washington, D.C. area is where I would call home. And before arriving here at OMSC, I was studying for my PhD. I did my PhD at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. And even before that, I was actually teaching intercultural relations at American University School of International Service, which is also based in D.C. So I have a love for that place. But also had the opportunity to work in China for several years, as well as in Geneva with an international church in Geneva, Switzerland. So had a fair share of international experience as well. All of this before coming here to OMSC.
Wonderful. Wow, that's a wealth of experience outside and within academic institutions as well. It's wonderful to hear that you've traveled to Geneva, to China, and here also here in America. I would also love to hear more, though, about your dissertation, your PhD program at Georgetown. So do you mind talking about the topic of your dissertation, some of the methodology that you might have employed? Yeah.
Certainly. Well, the PhD program at Georgetown University is fairly unique. Its focus is on religious pluralism. That's sort of a concentration that they recruit through to sort of market as a distinct program. And what that means is that the program really emphasized that whatever you're studying, you need to study it in relationship to the other religious worldviews of that context. And so my focus was on Christianity in contemporary China. And as a result, my coursework had a lot of contemporary Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, indigenous Chinese religions, side by side with my study of Christianity. And so that really flavored a lot of my research interests. My dissertation was focused on lived theology, which really is a question of how does the way people live reflect their theological convictions, and how does that speak to the church's understanding of God, and what kind of theology can we render from people's lived experiences. And so for my dissertation, I looked at young adult Chinese Christians in the Shanghai and Hong Kong regions. I conducted qualitative research, interviews, and participant observation. And then with that data, worked on some theological reflection about what theological themes can we see embedded in their lives. How does that connect with Scripture? How does that connect with Christian tradition? And how does it connect with, again, the other religious worldviews that have changed and developed in the context of modern Chinese history?
Wow,
it's a big project, but thankful it got done.
No, it sounds very fascinating, and would love to read more of it when the book comes out.
I hope the book comes out too. Yoko, I really do.
Well, once again, thank you so much for sharing more about your dissertation. Prior to, you've talked about prior to joining OMSC, but I remember, I think it was back in 2021 that you came here to Princeton, New Jersey, to join the OMSC team. And I was curious on what kind of drew you to OMSC. What have you found fulfilling during your time here as well?
So I hadn't heard of OMSC until my first time attending the Yale Edinburgh Conference at Yale Divinity School during my PhD studies. And I just remember, oh, there's this interesting center across the street, and didn't really know much about it. But they were incredibly hospitable, and you could feel a certain sense of community there that was a little bit different than your average academic space. So as I came to learn more about OMSC and its different programs, its seminars, its work with the World Church, I realized that this was a really encouraging and unique space for fostering the study of the World Church. Because it had the power to convene. It brought together scholars and practitioners from around the world to talk about mission in the World Church in such a way that was academically informed, but was also close to the ground, close to the experiences of churches. And that just seemed like the perfect combination of objectives that I wanted to invest my time and efforts in. And that's what drew me to OMSC.
And as you have progressed, I think you've been here now 2 or 3 years. 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found it fulfilling? How has your experience been so far?
Absolutely. It is everything I thought it would be in many ways. We are fully embedded here at Princeton Theological Seminary, which means we have access to all of the academic resources that are here. But as a somewhat independent center, we're also able to pursue programming on our own terms and our own interests. And so we're able to bring here every year a group of residential scholars from around the world working on different parts of the world, working on subjects across the World Church. And we're able to support them in their projects. We're also able to build fellowship. And so and we're able to get them connected with the rest of the seminary community as well. And so that expansion, I think, of OMSC from a research center that was only in partnership with Yale Divinity to a center that is now a part of the Princeton Seminary community has been really just a very exciting transition these past 3 years.
Of course. Well, thank you for that. And I like how you touched upon some of the independent or some of the OMSC programs that we provide here. And I would like to talk more about that as your role as the Associate Director. I know you've found very creative and active ways to educate the broader audience about world Christianity, mission studies, and so forth. And one of the popular programs here at OMSC is the online certificate in Lived Theology and World Christianity, which you are the lead instructor and the designer of it. So, for those that might not know about this certificate, for those that might be interested in the near future, do you mind introducing this online certificate in Lived Theology and World Christianity, and how has the program affected those that have participated in this certificate program?
Sure thing. Well, thank you. First of all, you're very generous to say it's a very popular program, because the truth is that as this video is being recorded, it's 2 years old, so it's a baby, and I've been a little bit protective of it, because as with any baby that's new, it's got lots of room for growth, right? But I will say that this online certificate in Lived Theology and World Christianity, from a nuts and bolts perspective, it's a 1-year program. It runs the whole academic year, completely online. And I sort of invite a cohort of up to 10 10 scholars or church leaders from around the world to participate by taking sort of a series of online modules, video lectures, readings, things that you would naturally see as part of an online course. I think what makes it unique, however, is me as well as a group of other young scholars, we take the time to do one-on-one advising via Zoom to help them with a research project. So it's not just a course, it's an opportunity for people to do a lived theology research project, a small-scale one, to get trained in some basic qualitative research methods, to conduct some interviews in whatever context they're in, whether it's in Kenya, in China, in Japan, in Brazil, and to do some theological reflection with that material, all in consultation with myself and other established scholars. And this makes the program unique. Beyond the nuts and bolts, however, I would say the reasoning for this program is because I experienced a gap in my own dissertation studies. When I was studying for my, doing research for my dissertation, I wanted to invest in this thing called lived theology. And what I found was you could talk to theologians, you could talk to social scientists, but they weren't always talking to each other. And it was a very small circle of people that were engaging qualitative research in theology. And even then, there was an even smaller sliver of people who were talking about theology and qualitative research and world Christianity. If you put those three things together, it was almost like nobody. I didn't have many conversation partners, and so full disclosure, I started this program because I'm selfish, and I wanted more people to talk to about world Christianity,
Well, I'm
lived
sure
theology.
many people have benefited.
And I think that's the thing that I found.
Yeah.
In the 2 years that this program has existed, I have found conversation partners. I have found young scholars and church leaders that are interested in these kinds of questions, and so that's been really encouraging to me. It affirms in me that what I wanted to study wasn't just some weird thing I wanted to study.
Of course. I see. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and I'm sure by hearing what you've just said and reading more about that on the OMSC website, they can encounter what the program is like in detail as well. So we look forward to more registrants in the next academic year. So aside from this online certificate, another exciting initiative that you've also spearheaded was the occasional blog. Kind of using that name occasional, you've invited various scholars, researchers from across the world who are involved with the World Church to contribute by writing small, medium-sized blog posts about their research, about what they've encountered in the World Church as well. I'm curious if you can speak more on the occasional. How has the experience been? What are some of the contents that has been exciting for you as somebody that has spearheaded this?
Yeah. Well, thank you again for your generous interpretation of these humble little new initiatives, because of course a blog these days is not actually a very exciting thing. Lots of organizations have blogs. But of course, OMSC didn't have a blog. OMSC didn't have an online sort of regularly updated presence. Our website was mostly just, here's our programs, do you want to participate or not? And in my mind, it made sense in this age of new media to catch up a little bit and bring in a regularly updated feature that would showcase the research and the work that's being done in world Christianity and mission studies in a more accessible way. In shorter, as you've mentioned, 500 to 1,000 word articles, as is common across sectors and organizations. Like yoga studios will have a blog these days about the latest things in yoga and testimony about what they experienced in yoga. And I thought, well, there needs to be a space for this in mission and world Christianity as well. And so at the face of it, it is a very humble, simple initiative, but really our intention for it is for it to grow into a platform of its own over time. That the occasional wouldn't just be a blog, but it would be a place where people want to go to check in on sort of live conversations, new research ideas, things like that. And that takes the fostering of a community, and so all of this points to OMSC thinking more about what does it mean to foster community in a more diffuse sort of digital media world, because OMSC has always been really good at fostering community when people come to OMSC.
Of course.
And so we're in the beginning of that. The name The Occasional is a nod to the original publication that became the International Bulletin of Mission Research. The publication was started by R. Pierce Beaver, one of the directors of OMSC, and he had published what was called the Occasional Bulletin from the Missionary Library while he was a professor at the University of Chicago. And he drew from the archives and the missionary libraries in New York to talk about the history of the World Church, but he was also updating people regularly on what was happening in ecumenical councils and events throughout the world. And so I would say the Occasional is trying to capture the same spirit of an occasional bulletin, because the IBMR today is a well-established academic journal, and we need something that's a little more flexible than that. And that's sort of the reasoning and the hope that went behind the Occasional, and we're really only just starting with that. A lot of these things are in their infancy, and we hope we can raise them up to be responsible young adults.
And one thing I really appreciated about the Occasional is that it not only speaks to academics but non-academics as well. So it's very exciting and very fascinating reads. From issues surrounding Christianity in Asia to Latin America, you can find so many exciting new blogs there as well. So I hope that our listeners and our viewers can visit the website as well. And kind of transitioning into some of your other programs that you might want to share with us. Are there anything that is currently under works that you might want to share to our viewers and to our listeners?
Sure. Well, the theme that is kind of emerging from our conversation is that OMSC, again, has had this very distinguished and successful history of fostering community for the World Church. Across its 100 years, first for North American missionaries, then for church leaders and young scholars around the world, and now here at Princeton, really welcoming more established scholars that can take advantage of the academic resources here. But especially since COVID, and a time where isolation is easier to fall into, especially since in this time when nations seem to be closing in on themselves a little bit more, and things are so much more partisan. For me, I've been thinking a lot about what does it mean to foster a scholarly Christian community across the world. It's quite an ambitious idea and vision. And you're certainly not going to accomplish that with an online course and a blog. But it's the beginning of something. It's the beginning of something that I hope World Church, or I would say Christians from the World Church, will see an online space and say, oh, I can be a part of that in some small way. I can contribute to that. And not only am I contributing to it, I can learn something from it. And so in addition to the online course, in addition to the Occasional, we are establishing sort of new media new mediums for communicating, like this Roundtable, which you've so generously decided to take on as the host. And isn't he a great host, ladies and gentlemen? He's going to feature a lot of great people. He will not feature himself. So we'll have to. I'll interview him later. And so this Roundtable is an example of the expanding media landscape that OMSC wants to build. And in addition, an online course is quite a commitment, especially when it goes through a year. So we're trying to actually break that down a little bit and create sort of asynchronous learning experiences, things that you can sign up for, pay sort of a modest fee and get access to a number of lectures and readings that are curated on certain topics like world Christianity or mission studies. That way you can learn about these subjects at your own pace, in your own way. So we're starting to develop these asynchronous learning experiences, and the big vision is that no matter where you are in your questions about world Christianity and mission studies, there will be an entry point for you. If you just have a few curiosities, you can just browse the Occasional. If you have more serious questions, you can purchase the asynchronous learning experience and do a more guided study on your own. You can sign up for our live streamed seminars. OMSC is well known for their seminars, and now we're live streaming them, right? And we're going to try to help foster that as an online space for learning. And if through all that you're committed, you want to really invest in a year-long course, then the online course is there, right? So we're really trying to build out a menu that fosters that sort of scholarly community beyond the four walls of the OMSC House, beyond the boundaries of this campus, because not everyone has the resources to come here.
Yeah.
And so OMSC believes in educational equity. It believes in amplifying the voices of the world church. And these new initiatives and programs are our way of trying to fulfill that mission.
As you are one of the leaders here at OMSC, and I can just see from the conversations that we're having, you have such a wonderful pedagogy in approaching sharing about world Christianity and mission studies, and not only limiting that to people here in Princeton, New Jersey, but embracing those that are around the world as well. And I think that will be a great contribution, not only here in New Jersey and here in America, but also, wherever you are in Africa, in Europe, or even in Asia or Latin America, and in Oceania, and so forth. There's so many different places where I think people will really benefit and enjoy the rich ideas and the rich, materials that you want to provide for everyone. So thank you for sharing that.
That's the hope.
Yeah. And one of the last kind of responsibilities that you have as the Associate Director that I want to touch upon is your role as the book review editor for the International Bulletin of Mission Research, the academic journal. I was wondering if there were any recent books that you came across that caught your attention, that you wanted to highlight for our viewers and listeners. So please.
Thank you. And yeah, as in the academy, one wears many hats, and so I do oversee the book reviews for the IBMR, and always get interesting titles that come across my desk that should really give you a good sense of what's the state of the field right now? What are the books that are being published, the topics that are being discussed? And in fact, the IBMR has an annual feature where we will seek out the suggestions and recommendations of established scholars across our network to recommend books that they felt were noteworthy from the past year. And so in the most recent issue of the IBMR, the April 2024 issue, we did publish our most recent list for the past year, 2023.
Yeah.
And so there are a number of texts from across different disciplinary, different denominational perspectives. Of particular note is Andrew Walls's new text, which is The Missionary Movement from the West. We know our beloved Prof passed recently, but Brian Stanley has taken some of his lecture notes from a series of lectures he would often give at OMSC, in fact, and edited them into a posthumous text that's making the rounds right now, and that's very well established. Gina Zerlo, who I know you've been scheduled to speak with, recently published a book on women in world Christianity, which I think, among things that I've heard, sets the table for many years to come on what it means to study the role of women and the importance of women to the world Christian movement. And of course, when we select these top 10 books, we're always looking for good scholarship historically as well as contemporary in particular regions, right? So, for example, we're looking at, we highlight Brianna Wong's new text on Cambodian evangelicalism based on her dissertation here at Princeton. We look at Chandra Malapalli's South Asia's Christians, looking at what's happening in the South Asian context. And and we have larger texts about, the questions of mission in the world today. A wonderful collection of essays called Emerging Theologies from the Global South, that's edited by Mithra Raheb and Mark Lampert. So the field is alive and well. There's a lot of great conversations happening in these texts, and we welcome people to dive in.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, especially about this yearly kind of highlighting the important works that has been going on each year. And I've been a follower of that to see what are some of the books that have been coming out. And I think this is a great thing to know for those that might be interested in the academic study of mission studies or world Christianity. They can engage right away. What are some of the important topics that has been going on each year? So thank you for sharing that, especially within IBMR. I think that's a wonderful contribution. For my last question, Dr. Law, I wanted to talk more about your ongoing research. I know, as you mentioned, you wear many hats, but another hat I think you wear is as a scholar and a researcher. And I'm very curious to know, after having moved on from that dissertation stage, now in taking teaching positions and now as an associate director, what are some of the ongoing research that you've been doing?
I think the best research comes out of the new questions that emerge from your previous research. Mm-hmm. And so my current work is closely tied to my dissertation in some ways. At the conclusion of my dissertation, I can't say that I actually came up with a conclusion. When you do sort of qualitative work, often I feel like the best you come up with is a good hypothesis. You do all this research and then you have a good hypothesis that you're actually going to have to investigate further. And that's what I'm doing now. Out of my field work and theological reflection with Chinese Christians and in the Shanghai and Hong Kong region, I came upon this theme of what does it mean to negotiate and adjust your faith as you move across different contexts. And just for some context on the research, when I say I interviewed Chinese Christians from Shanghai and Hong Kong, in the context of Hong Kong, I'm not talking about Hong Kongers who were born and raised in Hong Kong. I'm talking about mainland Chinese from the Shanghai region that moved to Hong Kong.
Oh, okay.
And so they're mainland Chinese, PRC Chinese, living in Hong Kong. And so the question became, well, how did their faith change when they went from one sort of Chinese Sinophone context to a very different one? Yeah. Hong Kong being quite different than the People's Republic of China. How do they renegotiate going to churches that operated differently than their house church in Shanghai? And this has led me to a deeper theological question that I want to spend more theological effort on, if you will, is this question of the relationship between sanctification and migration. I think that's the easiest way to sum it up. What does it mean for God's work to transform us into the image of Christ, or to make us holy as God is holy, through that movement and then the negotiations that come with that movement? I think it's present across the biblical record. I think it's present in theological thought, and I want to cover some of that. So that's the theological side of the question that I'm dealing with that came out of the dissertation. But there's also a practical grounded side. Because I did that research in Hong Kong, I naturally made a lot of friends in Hong Kong, and with recent events in the past decade in Hong Kong and the Communist Party's increased control of that region, I felt it was important to highlight the lived theologies of Hong Kong even more so, particularly in diaspora, as many Hong Kongers are out and about and reimagining themselves in new contexts. And so I'm working on a theological action research project with a cohort of young Hong Kong scholars, Hong Kong Christian scholars who are studying some aspect of the theological curriculum, but we're working together to try to discern, well, what does a lived theology of the Hong Kong diaspora look like in this exact moment when everyone's trying to figure out what Hong Kong is going to be. Yeah. And so those are the two projects that I'm currently working on. And they do come out of sort of the dissertation work. So don't feel obligated, Byung-ho, to cover all of your questions as you push through and finish up that dissertation. There will be space for those other questions on the other side.
Well, thank you for that encouragement, and thank you for sharing about the important work that you're doing. I think it's exciting and very important and relevant at this time. And not only myself, I'm thinking all our viewers and listeners will look forward to reading more of what you come up with other scholars as well. And I think it'll be a very pivotal work that you do, especially during this time. Once again, Dr. Law, it has been a pleasure to listen, to learn more about you, your work, and also what you do here at OMSC. But also, in between our conversations, we get to learn more about what OMSC is also about. So I really am very grateful for this opportunity to talk more with you. So, and again, thank you for this time today. And I hope that our viewers and our listeners will continue to follow up on OMSC, what OMSC does, and be more engaged in various aspects of what OMSC provides. So once again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Byung-ho. I appreciate all of your research and time.
All right, thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.